speaking with Andrew and Tess Herbert today from the Gundamain Feedlot. Well, Andrew and Tess, tell us a little bit about your operation and from its beginning to where you've got your operation now.
Well, where we are today, we've got two feedlots, which is Ladysmith Feedlot and Gundamain Feedlot, which is one's 6,500 head and the other one's 6,000 head. And where our background is, we came from a mixed farming background, and it was probably a main change was probably in the 80s when interest rates went to the roof. We had to look for something else to do for mixed farming because capital and machinery were just too expensive to buy for every operation in our mixed farming enterprise.
Why feedlotting though? Wouldn't it be a very expensive exercise to get involved with?
Well, we had an intensive 50 sow intensive piggery on the property which we were looking after, and we had a lot of the grain equipment, and we had a background. We liked intensive feeding, and plus we liked cattle. So the two mixed well together, and plus we had grain and fodder on hand to start off with.
Now you've developed from your original Gundamain feedlot at Eugowra. You then got involved with the feedlot at Canamble, and then you got involved with the Ladysmith feedlot in the south of the state. Why the expansion?
We were interested in ownership of cattle. We couldn't expand on the Gundamain site simply because of restrictions of the site. So we first went into partnership with constructing the 10,000 head Canamble site. But again, it was a custom fed yard. We were interested in ownership of cattle. So in 2010 we purchased Ladysmith feedlot, an existing site just outside of Wagga.
Why do you perceive that there's the desire to actually have ownership of the cattle as opposed to having cattle on contract in your operation?
I think we can better control the cattle coming in. It's entirely our decision, the numbers coming in, and then we've got the contacts so that we can contract those same cattle going out. So we have greater control. I think it's all about risk management. When grain prices are high and cattle prices are high, people are very reluctant to custom feed cattle. In this way we can control the numbers of cattle coming onto the feedlot.
How do you manage your risk though? Because grain prices do fluctuate, and we've seen prices rise in recent months with the US drought and its impact on Australian feed prices. So how do you try and protect your operation so that you can remain profitable?
Andrew explained today that we can, all the cattle that we buy are forward contracted. So we know the price of the grain that we'll have to feed to those cattle, we know the price of the cattle themselves, and we know the price that we'll get out the other end. So in some ways that's managing the risk of the cattle. We can determine whether or not we're going to make money on those cattle, and they're eventually sent to the abattoir. So it's a way of controlling the inputs through that process.
So with your feed grain, do you purchase well ahead? Do you do a 12-month purchasing plan to try and manage that risk?
Any one time, if we've got 6,000 cattle on feed, well, to finish those cattle will take 3,000 tonne of grain. So if we've got 6,000 cattle on feed, we committed to 3,000 tonne of grain. So we know we can, and when time we can feed those cattle out.
So from a producer point of view, what specifications are you looking for in animals entering the feedlot? You go to the sale yards or on farm to purchase. Well, what are you looking for?
We're looking for British bred cattle. Our specs are very wide. We're probably looking for cattle which are 300 kilos to 520 kilos live weight. Mainly black cattle are our preference. With the cattle under a certain weight, we'll background some of those cattle, and cattle over a certain weight, we'll put them straight on feed.
And what about out the other end? How much of a challenge is it to meet the specifications over the grid with the processor on the other side?
With weighing everything on the weigh-in, we know the weight of cattle on the weigh-in. Our production and our performance doesn't vary. We've got it down to a knack where it doesn't vary. So our performance over the last 4 months has probably only varied 5%. So.
And we also supply cattle for MSA, and regularly we're getting 98% compliance with MSA.
With the No Added Hormones campaign that one of the major retailers undertook, did that have an impact on your operation?
No, because we weren't dealing with that retail.
But did you see that there was a change in consumer preference at all, or did it remain reasonably stable?
No, we didn't notice any difference.
No.
Yeah.
And what about the future of feedlotting? Where do you see it heading?
Well, look, I'm optimistic about the future of feedlotting. I believe it's very definitely got a place within the Australian market, particularly during difficult years. We've had 2 wet years, so we've had increased competition from grass-fed producers. But in the difficult years, that tends to be when grain-fed cattle, we can supply a consistent product.
Andrew and Tess Herbert, thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you.